Hey, welcome back. This is the Pencil King Show. I'm your host, Mitch. And today it's just going to be me. I've been trying to interview art business coaches, and I've been speaking to a lot of different people on Instagram, and it's been cool, but what I'm finding is that, like a lot of things in life, you need to be at a certain point to take advantage of them. And so what I'm trying to tell you about is, so let's say, let's take fitness, because I feel like it's an example that a lot of people can relate to. So if you want to have an elite fitness coach, you probably want to have a certain level of fitness before you'd ever think of engaging that elite coach, right? And so I think with art, it's sort of the same thing, that you need like a foundation layer that you're standing on before a lot of the advice starts to make sense. And so I thought today, well, that advice is awesome. Like the last 2 weeks, I think the advice that has been given has been very easy to implement and very straightforward. But it also assumes that you have some kind of a foundation, which is where I see a lot of people getting tripped up. And it's also one of the things that when you look at someone online and you're trying to take the advice from them, you have to consider love. And I know it's going to sound really weird here talking about love, but just stick with me for a second, because I feel like I fell into the same sort of trap of giving this advice, that the advice was fine if there was love, but if there was no love, then the advice really fell down. And so this goes back right to the foundation. And last week I mentioned the book that I had written. So I just want to show it to you here. So it's Digital Artist Career Blueprint. You can look it up. And I think you could apply it to everything, but it's basically outlines my journey from when I was 7 years old and decided, hey, I want to make video games, all the way to when I was 30, when I left video games. So tiny little village, showing you all the steps along the way to Hollywood, building video game studios in China, and working at Activision. So the whole journey is here. And I also fell into that same trap of like thinking that you really need love. And so one of the things that I talked about in the book was that it took me a while to find the thing that I really loved, that I wanted, that I was able to just like really dive in and go headfirst into. So I'll run you through this quickly. And again, it's all outlined in the book, so if you're interested, you can see. But so you can self-identify where this might apply to you. So you're trying to do something and it feels like it's really a struggle, like you're really having a hard time putting in the time towards something. That, I would argue, there's an absence of love. Whereas some people, they just pick up something like, for example, watercolor. They just pick it up and it's just like, I love doing it. I don't know, it doesn't really make sense to me yet, but I love doing it so much that I'm even willing to do it poorly. And I found the same thing with guitar. When I was learning guitar, I hated the piano. I did not want to learn piano at all. My mom was a music teacher. She didn't teach me. She had somebody else teach me, but I hated it. It was always a struggle from about 5 years old to 12 or so. I was learning the piano, and it was a struggle, a fight every single day. So eventually she let me quit. Then a few years later, I got a guitar, and the guitar, I wanted to play it so much that I would run around the house without the strap, that goes across your shoulder to hold it in place. I would just hold it like this and strum it like crazy, running around the house, because I wanted to be a rock star. And I was so excited about guitar. So there was just love from the initial moment. But when it comes to art, it's like we see people doing things, we're like, I want to do that, that's so cool. But there's no love for the process. And so you start to go down that path and it becomes really difficult for you to do anything with it. So I just want to explore this concept and unpack it a little bit, and how it works, or how it worked for me when it came to art. And so that you listening, if you've been trying to do something, I get a lot of people emailing in, I want to be a concept artist, I want to be an animator. Or, so that's one level. And then another level is, I'm in animation school, I hate it, I absolutely hate animation. And I'm saying, like, I told you, you don't know that you're going to love something. Just because you love watching Pixar movies doesn't mean you love animation or like being an animator. So what you can do, though, which is really cool, is you can try these things out. And I think a lot of people don't realize that this is an option to them. That you can go and, there's tutorials on a bunch of stuff, and there's free software. Like, there's so much amazing free software these days that you can jump and dive into pretty much anything. And it doesn't have to cost you any money. It wasn't like that before, but now you can grab all kinds of software. So, and just to run you through a couple. So, I believe Paint Tool Sci is free. There's free tools. There's free sketching tools on like the Windows App Store, and there's probably free sketching tools on the Apple App Store as well that you can get for your computer. There's free sketching tools for your phone. So, I feel like as far as painting goes, you can do that. And even if you want to go all the way, there's Photoshop, which costs $10 a month. So you can find the Photoshop Lite or something like that, where I think you get Photoshop and Lightroom and something else for $10 a month. So for very little cost, you can have the professional tools and see if you like doing this stuff. And if you find that it's like a struggle and you're having difficulty moving forward with it, maybe it's just not for you. But that doesn't mean that art is not for you and that you're not creative, because there's other things that you can try. Same thing with 3D and animation. If you want to do that stuff, then get Blender. You know, I went to the old place that I used to work, one of the first studios that I worked at, where I call it my big break, and I was able to work on X-Men 2, doing previs for them. And so they've changed their pipeline, which, you know, pipeline just means like the set of tools and the process that you use to create the finished product. It all uses Blender now. So Blender is completely free, and you can do animation, you can do modeling, you can do compositing. Like, there's a lot of things that we don't usually talk about on the podcast here, but you can do that all in Blender, and you can create feature film worthy work with that. So let's take tools off the table. There's no like, and same with, if you just want to draw, I mean, you've got pens and paper and stuff. You can get into drawing easily. So let's go back and look at this idea of love and how it applies, and how you might be able to see if you love something or not. Because remember, there's a lot of different ways that you can be part of the creative process, right? So it often is just like very surface level. So we watch The Incredibles 2, and then we're like, I love Incredibles, I want to be an animator, and that's just the first place that you go to. But when you look at the credits for the movie, you realize that there's so many different pieces to the puzzle. And so that's a place to look at, you know, understanding what are the different job roles that people do, and maybe I could fill one of those things. So when I started, I was 7 years old. I wanted to be a video game. I wanted to make video games. I didn't know that I necessarily wanted to do art, although I should have clued in, but, you know, I was 7. Because I always loved drawing airplanes and stuff. A friend we often drew World War II airplanes, made these little booklets of our favorite planes and warships and stuff. So first I tried, you know, I was getting into character design a little bit when I was 7, 8 years old. Like I would take a universe that I liked, which was Ninja Turtles at the time, and like, what would another character that fit into this universe look like? Same thing with Mortal Kombat was another one that was big when I was growing up. So if you had to make a new character for the universe that you already like, what would that character, who would it be? So this is a way that you can start to get into character design. And I found that, well, I'm not that good at drawing. So then I went and, I mean, I was okay. I was, you know, the best kid in the class, or one of the best kids of the class at this art stuff. But, you know, you go back and you look and you're just like, okay, maybe there was something there, but I'm not sure. So from there, what I realized that I really enjoyed was the story of the games. And I thought, okay, cool, I could write stories and direct the action, because again, it was very Ninja Turtles heavy. I'd been watching Ninja Turtles for a long time. I played the first Ninja Turtles video game, which I do not recommend you go back to trying that out. And then I wrote a story for the second Ninja Turtles game, what it could be like, right? So let's say you have a favorite property or universe, and you love this game. So let's say it's Halo. Right? You've been playing all the Halo games, and you're like, okay, well, what would the next Halo, what would the story, what would the evolution be, or what would the prequel be? Star Wars, you know, take whatever you want, whatever universe, but flesh that out. See if while you're doing it, if you really enjoy it and you want to do more and more of it. It takes no money. It takes a bit of time and focus to try these things out. But if you just stick with me here, I'm going to get to the full circle to where I did find my love. So I wrote the story out for Ninja Turtles 2. I think I was about 8 years old at this time. The game eventually came out, and it was weird because the story for the game was like pretty much exactly the story that I had written out. Like, let's say it was like 90% the same. You know, April gets kidnapped, and then you have to go and rescue her. It's maybe it was very easy to see, but as an 8-year-old kid, I sort of took it as a nod that is like, okay, you're on the right track here. But I didn't end up sticking with it. Like, I wasn't interested in writing stories for a bunch of different things. It was just more like the love for Ninja Turtles. About that same time that I got into level design, which is like, oh, how do you even do level design, right? You don't know, there's no frame of reference. It was like 1987. I didn't even have a computer. I didn't have anything to make graphical tools. So just got out pen and paper and started drawing things out. You know, boxes, you know, there's a rectangle that leads to this bigger square, and so that's like a sewer pipe that leads to a larger room. If you're not familiar with Ninja Turtles, this won't make sense, but they lived in the sewers. But I was trying to do this stuff. I was trying to figure it all out. And the next thing was music, which, you know, I already told you that I wasn't a big fan of the piano. Trying to do music. From there, the next leap that happened, so I'm trying all these things, right? I knew that I wanted to get into video games, but so far I've tried character design, level design, story writing, and I'm like 8. And you can do all of this stuff now. You don't have to wait for anybody. You don't have to go to college for this stuff. I mean, just do it. Just try it out. Even if you're like, wow, how do I even start? How do you think it would be? Like, imagine it. Just, you don't have to wait for somebody to show you this stuff. Just think about how it could be done. And then if you get stuck, it's like, go to YouTube. How do game designers design a level? It's probably going to be way too complicated to understand. So it might be easier just to try it out first yourself than to try and get instruction. Because if you can try it out yourself and you're like, I really love this. I like doing this. Then that's your sign of just keeping going, right? So I didn't love any of that stuff. It's not that I hated it, but I just didn't have the same kind of feeling that I did once then the next step was getting into 2D art for games. So we had MS Paint. If you're familiar with it, it was like a pixel art program. And we were putting our own characters into video games. And so this was like a huge leap because now I had a computer, I had graphics software. I mean, it was only MS Paint, there was no Photoshop, but I could take the stuff that I was making and see it in a game. So this is like a huge leap to being closer to video games. So I don't know what you want to do. If it's animation, right? Let's say it's animation. How do you get to making a finished animation video that you could send to your friend and be like, hey, I made this. And the friend can say, oh, wow, how do you make all this stuff move? How do you make all this happen? You're now one giant leap closer to the place that you ultimately want to do. Same thing with, like, if you want to do a graphic novel. That's another common one that people come and they want to do when they come to pencil case. Make a web comic, you know, just get started. See, and if you hate it, hey, in one weekend, you've realized, oh man, I totally hate this. I can't believe I wanted to make a graphic novel for 5 years. And then when I actually sat down to try it, I realized how much I hated it. I never want to do this. I'm going to move on to something else. That's totally fine, right? So from there, the 2D into the games, then the next thing that I discovered was 3D. And that's where I found love. It was like I was this fish kind of like out of water and trying different things, going down different avenues. And once I discovered 3D, everything made sense. It was sort of like the analytical part of my mind had it was appeased. There was like precision, like to the decimal point precision that you could use in 3D. It didn't focus so much on drawing, and I could also do animation, and there's just like, it tied everything together, and it was so cool. And so for me, that was love when I found 3D. And that love of wanting to completely understand and go so deep into it, that's where all the career happened and all the good things. And so I think when you look at someone who's insanely successful, they have love. And this is the missing part, that no one prefaces their talk in just saying, like, look, if you don't have the same kind of love and passion for this craft that I do, all this advice is not going to make any sense, and you're not going to be able to follow it, because without love, it's nothing. It's like trying to love a person, like trying to be married to a person that you don't necessarily love. It's going to be really hard. You're going to have to force yourself. So if you have that love, and what I'm advocating here is that you try different things to find the thing that you love, but do like fast, quick tests. Don't think of like, oh, really want to make a graphic novel and then procrastinate on it for 5 years. I'm talking about like this weekend, get your stuff in order and try making something and be like, yes, I'm loving it. Time is flying by. I'm in a flow state. This is amazing. If you're there, well, then that's a sign. It's like, keep going with this thing. But if you're like, I don't want to do it, and you're getting distracted, and it's a sign that it's probably not for you. And I just want to throw in one more thing here, that when you do try to do this stuff, please turn off your phone and get rid of get away from your electronics, because these things are seriously dangerous. And I'm becoming more and more aware of just how damaging they are to our creative ability and our creative function. That if you're doing it and constantly being interrupted, you don't have a chance for your brain to kind of like go into that mode where the creativity starts flowing. You're just going to constantly being interrupted. It's like music where the record keeps skipping. It's like, and it's going to work against you. So give yourself at least an hour of like, put your phone into airplane mode, and just, if you need it there, set it aside and set a timer on your monitor or whatever, and or some kind of a timer, so okay, when an hour's gone by, I can turn my phone off of airplane mode. But I've started doing this recently, just turning my phone off, like it's off right now, and it's amazing how much time there is once you start to disconnect. So anyway, you're trying to find the love. So that's one way to do it, because I see, I've worked with people who didn't have the love. I've worked with a lot of people who didn't have the love. So how do you get to be a professional working in some of the most competitive industries if you don't have the love? And this is where I think you can go and be trained, like at a vocational school, which is its own risky proposition, because you need to make sure you're looking at the placement rate and the success rate of whatever education you're paying for. So to put this more into concrete terms, right? So let's say I feel like the passionate person, they're interested in A to Z. And we had an interview with Sand McUnicorn where we really sort of deep dove on this, because both her and I, we had that love for our craft and we wanted to learn absolutely everything about it. So it's sort of like all encompassing. Once you find the love, it's like, that it's the thing you want to do. If you don't have the love, it doesn't mean that you will never be an animator. It just means that you may have to just focus on your one piece and be trained. So to give you an example of what that could look like for visual effects, where one of the jobs is doing the lighting. So you have your animator, you have your modeler, you have your texture team, you have your compositors, and lighting and rendering, at least back when I was in that world, that's what it was called. And so they would light the scene and make everything look great, have great depth and like really vibrant color. But the lighters are not doing animation, and they're not doing the modeling, and they're not doing a bunch of other things, generally speaking. Their job is just to be experts at the lighting. And this is what I'm talking about, where you could go and be trained and say, hey, I want to be a lighter for CG scenes, for computer graphics and movies and whatnot. And there are schools that can focus and teach you that. They might teach you a little bit of lighting or a little bit of modeling, and a little bit of texturing and animation stuff. But if you know that that's the main thing that you want to focus on, then they can teach you that, and then you can go and fill a role being lighting, and you can be great at it. You don't have to have the passion. What I found with these people is they're where I was always like, hey, let's talk about this stuff. Have you seen this magazine? Look at this video. Have you I was all into all the news and everything. And they just like, no, I'm hanging out with my family. Like once I leave work, I'm done. And I didn't understand that before, that there were two paths to do this. So I just thought it would be a good topic today to dive into that a little bit, so that you could be aware of where you sit on things, hopefully try out some new things. And if you're not feeling the love for something, then that's okay. You can go and get trained. And if you see, I know a lot of people are listening, but if you see behind me, I've got my my latest Evolve painting. And so this is an example of some of a school where you could go and say like, okay, well, what do the student results look like do you have a process that will get me to where I want to go to? And if so, then yeah, you don't necessarily need to love oil painting. Like I wouldn't say that I love oil painting. I'm going to really appreciate it, and I'm glad that it's part of what's in my life. But just like going to a technical school to learn a certain part of the graphics pipeline, I'm going to like a technical school, Evolve, that shows me the steps of learning oil painting and learning a process to get consistent results that I can then go ahead and sell if I want to. So I think that's it for today. Just a quick mention again, because this is new. We had this available, the Digital Artist Career Blueprint, for quite a while. This is a different kind of way promotion on Pencil Kings. But recently I had to throw it up on Amazon, so it's available there if you want the Kindle version. I think it's like $3, or maybe it's $3.50, so you can get it. And what I tried to do with this is that when I'm reading these books, is I create the things that I wish I had when I was a kid. So basically, when I see people who are successful, I wish I could understand the steps that they took, like right in the beginning when they were really struggling and right at the beginning. And so that's what this book goes back to, 7 years old, and kind of goes each kind of leap along the way. And then at the end of each chapter, I also like break things down, the action steps, because I always hate it when you like go to the book and you're like, oh, what was I supposed to do again? So it makes it easy to just look at the last page of each chapter, or to go to the first page of the next chapter and go back one. And then you can just say, oh, right, that was the action steps for this. Here's what I missed. So it's kind of like the notes, the Coles notes were already done. I think we call them Coles notes in Canada. We call them Clip Notes maybe in the States. But anyway, the short notes, they're all there and ready for you to go. And yeah, I think I tried to, it's video game centric, but you could use it for any kind of digital art. So that's it for this week for the show. And as usual, we'll have show notes over at pencilkings.com/show. We're working on some cool things behind the scenes at Pencil Kings, where, you know, if you're new tuning in, what we do there is we help artists kind of make the next step and nurture them in a very safe, private environment. That's one of the differences with Pencil Kings. I see a lot of public forums, and let me tell you, there is a lot of hate on the internet. I experience it not quite daily, but often. And it's just sort of the nature of the internet. You get to be anonymous, and people get to have their opinions. They would never say those opinions if it was face to face, but on the internet, it's sort of safe to do that. So we push that aside. So if you're ever if you're worried about being in a safe place, that's what we've tried to create over at pencilkings.com. And then briefly, I also mentioned Evolve, which is the other project that we have going on and working. And if you remember listening a couple episodes ago, we were talking to Kristen, who is she's like cruising through the program really quickly, and she just accepted and finished her first commission. So I just wanted to say, hi and congrats to Kristen, one of the students there, because it's really getting exciting now, seeing the students that after they have sort of done the first half of the course and they have professional illustration skills, where that's going to take them going forward. So I will see you next week with another episode, and as usual, if you have questions, or a suggestion for a guest or something like that, you can always email into me, Mitch at pencilkings.com. See you soon. Bye. That's it for the episode of the Pencil Kings Show. Thanks for hanging out. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can always grab us on iTunes if you want to listen in the car, at the gym, whatever you want. If you are listening and you want to watch and see what's happening, you can always go over to YouTube and look up Pencil Kings and you'll find us there. We'll be back next Wednesday with another episode of the show, and until then, stay creative.
Truth demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.